What's up, everyone? In this video, I'm going to show you the best annuities with the highest growth rate and the lowest fees possible. But first, let's just have a quick recap of the different types of annuities and how they work. So the first is there's what's called a fixed indexed annuity where you're linked to some type of index like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Russell, and you're getting some percentage or correlated growth. So if the S&P goes up 10%, you get a percentage of that or all of that. But then the trade-off is there's no downside risk. And so it has a 0% floor. And so you get the growth of the market. But then if you don't want to lose money when the market goes down, you're not susceptible to that risk because if the market goes down 20%, your floor is 0%. Then there's what's called a multi-year guaranteed annuity, a MYGA. This is where you put your money in over a period of time. In exchange, you get a guaranteed growth rate. And so, currently, like there's 4-year MYGAs that are paying 5.5%. And so if you put in $100,000, you get that 5.5% growth rate every single year, guaranteed over those 5 years. Even if they cut rates, you're guaranteed that growth rate. If the market goes down, you're guaranteed that growth rate, but you're not tied in with the market, so you're not getting additional upside. You're just guaranteed that rate, which could be much better than just keeping money in a savings or a money market. And then the third way, and this is something some people are familiar with, is what's called a variable annuity. And a variable annuity, you have underlying investments in them that could be correlated to an index, it could be connected to mutual funds, and typically you're getting the full growth of the market. So if the market's up 30%, you might get that full 30% or beyond. If the market goes down 20%, you could be susceptible to that risk if there's no downside protection. And so you could potentially lose money when the market goes down in a variable annuity. Historically, variable annuities, when people hear about them, they think high fees because historically variable annuities have had high fees. It's a product that's been re-engineered over time and that can be used to, potentially have no fee if it's done properly in the right environment. So those are the three big ways that you can accumulate money with an annuity, grow it, at a greater rate than just keeping money in cash, and also have very flexible, options when it comes to fees, potentially no fee. So those are the three options. But what we're going to show you today is the two best ways that you can grow your money with an annuity with actually zero fee. That's what I'm going to show you today is the best way to accumulate wealth with zero fee. And so I'm going to share my screen with you and we're going to jump right in. And the first example that we're going to use is a registered indexed linked annuity. Principal has a great product. I'm going to use Principal Life Insurance Company's product. If this is a product you're not familiar with or you haven't seen, talked about on the internet, I'm going to lead with saying it is a securities product. This is not a recommendation. You do have to be, investment licensed to solicit this product. But I'm not making a recommendation. This is just for an example of somebody who lives in New Jersey. They're 60 years old. And so this product, as I give that disclaimer and say that I'm not making a recommendation here, it's because it's a variable annuity. So you see index linked and you could say, oh, it's a fixed index, or no, it's actually a variable annuity. It's on a variable annuity chassis. How it works is it's a variable annuity, but you're linked to, a specific index, whether it's the S&P 500 or the Russell. And what they do is they give you what's called buffer protections. And so over the 6-year period, so this is a 6-year annuity, they're going to protect you up to a percentage. It could be -10, -20, and some even have even further percentages that will protect you if the market goes down. For the sake of today, we're just going to look at one that has a -10% protection. And so what we're looking at is an allocation where over the 6 years, 80% of the money is going to be in an index that mirrors the S&P 500 with a 10% buffer. What that means is of the 140,000 you put in, you're protected up to -10% if the market goes down. Now, if the market goes down -15% over that period, you lose 5% versus losing the full 15. If the market's only down 8%, you don't lose any money. So you're protected because you have that buffer that protects you against market loss. Fun fact, is that the market over a 6 year period has never been down less than minus 15%. And so there's actually a minus 20% feature that exists with this product. But I'm showing the minus 10 because you actually get a little bit higher growth rates. So in this example, the other benefit of this is you get the downside protection, but you actually get a bump or an increase on the performance of that index over the 6 years. And so the S&P 500 principal is going to give you 105% of the growth of that index over the 6 year period for the S&P 500. And so if it grows 10%, you get 10.5%, which is awesome. So you get just a little bit extra versus if you would just put in an S&P 500 index fund yourself, you're better off because you're going to get a little bit better growth rate than just keep it in a brokerage account that's taxable in an index fund. The Russell 2000, that 20%, has a little bit more risk to it. The Russell can be a little bit more volatile, but they actually give you 115% over that 6 year period. And so if the Russell's up 10%, you actually get credited 11.5% over that 6 year period. So it's a way that you can get an increase on what the index does over that period of time, but you get downside protection. And here's the other nice thing. There's no fee to this product. And so if you're watching this today and you have a variable annuity that you're paying 1.5 to 3.5% fees, you can roll it into this annuity and save 1.5, 2.5, 3.5% in fees because this has zero fee. And a lot of times, if you're in an existing variable annuity, you're fully susceptible to market risk. And so, what you're able to do is switch this, lower your fees multiple percentage points. That could be thousands of dollars a year in fee savings and be protected on the downside. But the other alternative is if you're just sitting in a brokerage account in a bunch of index funds, or your 401k's got a bunch of index funds in it, this is a way that you can reallocate, take the same risk tolerance because you're still participating in the same index over that period of time, but you're protected from the downside risks that you don't get if you're just in an index by yourself. And so that's how it works from a accumulation and protection standpoint. Now, what's great when we look at this example is we actually go back in time and say, hey, how would this have done based on how the market performed, the last 10 or 11 years? So if you were 60 setting this up or 61 in this example with 140,000, and let's say it's a Roth IRA, and you put it into this, strategic outcomes RILA product. At the end of year one, based on 2014 growth, you would have had $172,000 that would have grown over that period. At the end of the segment, your 140,000 would have grown to $256,000 over that period. So the market did good over that period of time. The next 6 year segment, let's say you renew it, you get the same rates. That 256,000 would have grown to $520,000 today. And once again, this isn't hypothetical. This is actually based on how the indices performed the previous 10 years from 2014 to today. So this is based on real numbers, real math of how this product would have performed and how you would have been credited had you put your $140,000 into it over that period of time. And so once again, this is a great way if you're somebody watching this that's looking for growth, you're looking at, potentially using an annuity or replacing annuity. This is a way that you can get great growth, get a bump or an increase on the growth of what the market would have done and be protected on the downside. But the big thing is you have to be willing to accept some downside risk because even in this example, the minus 10, there is an example where you could be down 15% or 20. I know 20% hasn't happened over a 6 year period, but in theory, it could happen. And so this is the person who's willing to take a little bit of downside risk, but still get the upside growth. So this would be somebody who already has a variable annuity. They're looking to take more risk in their investment portfolio, or once again, you've already got IRAs and 401ks that you're just in an indice like the S&P 500 or the Russell or the NASDAQ, and you want to diversify and be in the same look and feel, but reduce your volatility at the same time and reduce your fees, this is a great way to do it. So that's the first option you have, using a variable annuity, using the registered index linked annuity product that you can get great growth with no fees over a 6-year period of time. In the event of an emergency, you need money out, you can get 10% out each year without a penalty or a fee. So this person could have taken 14,000 a year out with no strings attached and still getting all the benefits that come with it. The other option we have is using a fixed indexed annuity. And so I'm going to use the Global Atlantic. Their 4 accumulation 2 is the example here today. And so you could use the fixed indexed annuity. So same thing. So we use 60 from New Jersey, puts 140,000 in. Now the difference is this is a 10-year annuity. So whereas the other one was only 6 years, this is an extra 4 years. So a little bit longer period of time. Now, remember in the refresher, fixed indexed annuities, you get the growth, some upside of the market based on an indice, but then there's a 0% floor, so there's zero downside risk. You can't lose money if the market goes down. What we're going to look at is an allocation. So we talked about 80/20 in the last one. This one's a 60/40. So 60% of it's mirroring a JP Morgan, 2-year point-to-point strategy that's once again mirroring indices. The indices, over the last 10 years, the highest growth period was 9.9%. But the most recent 10 years has been closer to 5% is how that index has performed. And you get 205% of the performance over the 2-year period. So let's say you average 5% over 2 years, you get 4x that. And so you would be getting a 20% return on your money for those 2 years for the 60%, which is an amazing deal. And at the end of 2 years, that ends. So then you would renew it into another index based on where rates are at, and you would pick the highest, performing one over that period. And then the other 40%, you're just going to be in a fixed account, which is growing at 4.75%. And so we're doing an investment allocation very similar to how you would design a portfolio, 50/50, 60/40. And so we have that portion of money that we're getting some growth, so hoping to get some growth. We can't lose any money, but hope we're getting some upside following an index. And we have 40% that we can't lose, that's just guaranteed. Doesn't matter how the index performs, even if it's at 0%, you're guaranteed 4.75. So you're always getting some type of growth rate on your money at any given time, whether the index is performing or not. You got 40% of it that's going to at least get 4.75% guaranteed rate of return on your money while you're trying to accumulate. This product has no fees, over the 10-year period. And so this is what it would look like. And so you put in the 140,000. Year one, there's 142,000. At the end of the 10 years, your $142,000 would have grown to $322,000 over that period of time. Just using this strategy, 60% involved in an index trying to get a higher growth rate, 40% you're just guaranteed a fixed rate, hopefully in the 4.75% range. And so what you'll see is this is an amazing growth rate with zero downside risk. You're not susceptible to any downside risk. So for the person who, either has money sitting in a savings CD, brokerage account just sitting in money market funds earning 2, 3, 4%, this is a way that you can take that money, get, upside potential and have zero downside risk and get a greater growth rate on your money over a 10-year period. That's the big thing is you got to, be willing to set the money aside for 10 years. Same thing, you can get 10% out each year, no strings attached, and still get the benefits. But this is a great way to accumulate wealth with no fee and also no downside risk. So if you're listening to this today and you're somebody that doesn't want to take any market risk, this is a great alternative just to keeping money in a money market or a CD that's, as they continue to cut rates or look to cut rates, you're protected because you have all these upside potential options, but you don't have to worry about the downside risk associated. And so something like this is the highest performing product on the market, at the time of this recording. This is a great way that you can get growth on your money with no fee and also no downside risk at the exact same time. And so, as a recap, the two best ways that you can grow your money with zero fee today is using the registered index linked annuity or a fixed indexed annuity. Remember, the trade-off is the registered index linked annuity. You have a downside protection, but there's still some downside risk. The fixed indexed annuity, there's zero downside risk. You're getting upside potential, but it's maybe not going to get all of the explosiveness. You're not going to get that extra bump over a 6-year period that's guaranteed to you as a, credited interest like the registered index linked annuity. So those are the two best ways. They both have zero fee. And so you can move dollars that you're paying fund fees, maybe an existing annuity, you can move it into that and save thousands of dollars a year in fees on your money. Once again, if you're looking for professional advice and you want our help making a decision on what's the best thing based on your risk tolerance, your planning, that's where you can book a time on my calendar in the description of this video. We'd be happy to give you an idea of what's the best solution based on your goals and your objectives. As always, it's not rocket science, it's just revolutionary.